All right, let's talk some Illinois side of this Illinois Purdue matchup, a huge one. It's Joey Wagner. What's up, Wags? Does anybody call you Wags?
No, but it'd be cool if they did.
You actually like it? Sometimes I'll
I
call
do.
it like Joe, Joseph every once in a while.
You don't watch Billions. Hopefully, at least one other person listening to this watches Billions. Guy goes by Wags. I can't think of his name in real life, but he was Gale in Breaking Bad.
Oh, okay, yeah. No, Gail.
David Constable. David Constable is his name.
Yeah,
He
good
goes
act.
by he goes by Wags in Billions, and I always thought, man, that's a cool nickname.
Well, Joey Wags really does have some mob, you know, kind of
Oh,
connotations to
that'd be an honor.
it. Joey Wags. We'll go with it. What's up, Joey Wags? What's up?
Busy week, man. Basketball snuck up on us fast, Werner, and you're flying to Vegas in like a week.
I know.
This is nuts, man. 2 top 25 programs. Who would have thought?
Not us. Not us.
Not us.
All right. Illinois 6.5-point favorites, 44.5 over under. The weather, 36 degrees. Hard to imagine because we're recording this Thursday and it's like 70 and sunny. 10 to 15 mile an hour winds. I'm done predicting whether the weather will help one team and not the other, but that would seem to fit with the team that doesn't pass as much or rely totally almost on the pass. But there's a huge matchup, Joey. We'll dive into it, the Illinois side of things. But I shared my thoughts on the Lunny extension. I would imagine Ryan Walters and Brett Bielema extensions would be in the works here at some point. It sounds like they are. But your thoughts on Barry Lunny getting an extra year and six-figure raise?
Yeah, it's a no-brainer, right? Like, I get it. I get the red zone right now. It's kind of the hot topic, and it should be. It's fallen short in that area, but there's no doubt. Like, I don't know that anybody can look at this team, eye test, stat test, and say this offense isn't better with Barry Lunny. And this is what you do. Like, this is what good programs do with good coordinators is you're proactive. You keep them around. It looks better when you're going to talk to recruits. It's deserved. I mean, this is a deserved raise, I think, for Barry Lunny. I don't really think there was another option. You've got a program that's top 25, that's getting attention, that could win the freaking West. You keep those guys. Like, that's just what it is. And I think it's weird, Jeremy, because like I think a lot of people who consume the news were like, yeah, duh. But it's like the timing of it is unfortunate in the sense that like the red zone issues are stalling, and that's where some people choose to focus. But there's really no other choice. It's the right choice, and he's earned it, dude. He has made this offense better, and he's made it more attractive in the recruiting pitch too, and all of that goes together.
Yeah, I think anybody who thinks, Barry Lunny's not good at this job, all right, you can think that. I'm not going to tell you, but I just disagree with you wholeheartedly. I think he's good. He's getting paid like a middle of the pack offense coordinator in the Big Ten now. He wasn't at the beginning of the season. Now he is, because Illinois' offense is middle of the pack Big Ten offense. And you know what they're doing with Barry Lunny? What they didn't do last year? They're winning. Right? Like they're winning football games because their offense is taking step forwards to go along with a defense that is top notch under Ryan Walters. And Ryan Walters is paid like a top notch Big Ten defensive coordinator. So I think this is the going right. I think it's smart by them to be proactive. I think it's smart to show that, yeah, this is our guy. We found it, to anyone who's doubting it. But most importantly, it's about keeping stability. And I think Josh Whitman and his, message, his statement, one of the biggest things he said is stability is key to us building on this, right? To getting towards a championship level. When we have good people, we need to keep them. And I agree that Barry Lunny is one of those good people. Is he perfect this year? No, but he's been good. I love his concepts. They just need to find a way to put the ball in the end zone, because that is their biggest issue. But moving the ball 20 to 20, I think some of the concepts he has in the red zone are good. They just need to find a way to execute better, whether that's different personnel packages, whether that's better coaching, some of these things when they come into the red zone. But that's not going to mar the fact that this group is taking a huge step forward. And I think if they needed to, they could score more points if they wanted to make some of these stats look better, but they haven't had to in most of these second half games. So you don't let one loss, one disappointment, but he hasn't been perfect, but he's been a huge upgrade. And to keep him long-term makes a lot of sense. I don't have really much to add to that other than, yes, I do think this offense, Joey, does certainly help you sell to a Malik Elzy, to the next quarterback. Look what he's done with Tommy DeVito. Like Tommy DeVito and Barry Lunny, to me, I say hand in hand all the time. I put them together when I discuss this offense because, yes, Tommy DeVito has been great and has been a huge upgrade, but that goes along with an offense. He's performed better in this offense than Dino Babers' offense, right? So I think Barry Loney gets some of that credit too, because the pairing of those two has been the key to all of this.
Yeah, I think if you were to go back on August 1st and say, hey, take the record out, right? Like just take the record out of it, which I think is obviously a huge part of this discussion. And you were to show people and say, hey, these are what the offensive stats are going to be on November 10th, I guess it is now. What would you think? And people would say, keep that guy around. He's good at this. And there's, yeah, you're right. He hasn't been perfect. Few coordinators on either side of the ball are, right? Like there's always critical moments where those things come up. But yeah, I mean, I think the big picture, Jeremy, and we talked a lot about how he was such an important figure in the Illinois football discussion and the big picture of it. I think a lot of that's been delivered. And I think you're going to see more of that come fruitful in the offseason because I think the pitch at some of these key positions is much improved to where it was a year ago at this time. And it's what you got to do. And I think he's earned it all the way through.
One thing we got to talk about coming up with this game, Joey, is one thing Illinois hasn't had to deal with a lot this year outside of maybe Josh McCray and Ezekiel Holmes is the injury bug. But you had a couple key guys leave the game, Taz Nicholson, Seth Coleman, and again, Josh McCray. You just talked with Brett Bielema. What's the latest on those guys?
Yeah, Taz Nicholson has been cleared. Brett Bielema said he was in concussion protocol. He's been cleared. He practiced. I would expect him to play on Saturday. That's big. That's a big one for Illinois to play opposite Devin Witherspoon. Seth Coleman has not yet been cleared. That doesn't sound to me. I mean, if you're not cleared on Thursday, I don't know. I don't know what his status is. Josh McCray is a game time decision. Remember, he was out with that. It looked to us, Jeremy, like a knee injury, suffered in week 0. He came back and he fell awkwardly on a horse collar tackle down the sideline. We did not see him again, as I recall, in the game after that tackle. He's a game time decision, so we'll see. This is you feel for Josh McCray because it's been a really up and down, frankly, more down than up season for him injury wise. So we'll see. We'll see what that looks like with him. But I think getting Taz Nicholson is back, and I guess we're back on injury watch pregame, Jeremy, to see who's dressed, who's not, and Seth Coleman and Terrell Jennings. Brett Bielema didn't give an update on him. I didn't frankly think to ask in the list of names that I rattled off. So don't know about him, but Taz Nicholson's a big one to have back opposite Witherspoon.
Yeah, because you missed Taz later in that game. Jaden Reed took advantage of a young corner in Tyler Strange. To Tyler Strange's credit, came back, made a nice pass breakup. I don't think he gave up much after that, though Michigan State was a little more conservative. We got to remember Josh McCray ran for 156 yards at Purdue last year. Chase Brown, I don't think played at all in that game. I'm going to look back. Right. Going to look back on that. Yeah, he didn't play at all in that game, and Josh McCray was awesome. Of course, Chase Brown is available in this one. Seth Coleman is a significant guy if he cannot go. So that's going to be the one I'm watching for more than even Josh McCray, because Seth Coleman's been playing an all Big Ten first team guy this year. And if they don't have him, you got to get pressure on Aiden O'Connell. And while Gabe Ackus is really good, Alec Bryant has shown flashes, Joey, of being really good there. But Purdue also can run the ball a little bit better than they have in previous years. And Seth Coleman's been very good against the run here as well. So that could be a significant loss against a team that loves to throw the ball around. And then if Seth is out, there's not much depth behind those top two of Gabe Ackus and, Alec Bryant. Shimon Cooper, Jared Beatty are the guys who have traveled. I would imagine they'd probably go more towards their inside linebackers being the overhang guy and some of those bare fronts. They might go more of that look. So will be interesting. We haven't had to talk much about these injuries, which is part of the reason they are 7-2 at this point.
Yeah, I'm really curious what they do. Remember, Alec Bryant, or Kevin Kane told me this week, and we've known this is kind of a reminder. This is the most he's played. And remember, it's not been a lot, basically since his senior year of high school. It was COVID year at Virginia Tech. He sat out last year. So he's still really raw in terms of in-game experience. We haven't seen a lot from Shimon Cooper. So you do wonder how they're going to handle that. I'm with you. I think that bare front where you pull an inside linebacker down, I think Keith Randolph has shown the ability to slide out to the edge a little bit more at times in some different fronts. So if he's out, and we don't know if he is, that would, I think, would we see more creativity, more different packages from Ryan Walters, from that defensive coaching staff to make up for that. But Illinois has been And I think some of that probably goes to Tank Wright. Some of that goes to just flat out luck. Illinois has been pretty healthy this year, Jeremy. Really healthy. Couple, obviously McCray. I'm sorry, Ezekiel Holmes. But man, this is as healthy a year as I remember from Illinois football. And we said since the beginning they need it because there's not a lot of depth.
Yeah, this is the healthiest they've been going into November or late November, right? Then I can remember. All right, some lingering stuff. We've hit on this stuff, but let's hit on it again because people are talking about it. Special teams is a lingering issue for this team. Caleb Griffin's back. He's the kicker again. Didn't get a chance last game because of the wind. I don't think that'll be the case, even though the wind could be a factor. It's cold. But Hugh Robertson, Joey, you asked this week, and I know he was asked again on Monday, is there anybody else? And the answer is no. Like, unless we're surprised, unless they're holding something back on us, and Fabrizio Pintone can also be a great backup punter, I think Hugh Robertson is the guy, because the few things we saw during training camp were special teams, and Hugh Robertson was definitely the best guy. He's just got to be better in games.
Yeah, this is what's tough when training camp is closed, right? We don't get to see that stuff. Frankly, we didn't know that Fabrizio Pintone was going to be as serviceable a backup kicker as he was. But yeah, I think Brett Bielema has to say a lot of that with Hugh Robertson too, in the same way that during training camp he wanted to make sure Art Sikowski knew that Art Sikowski was still in the mix. I mean, you can't, if you go out there and say we're screwed, that doesn't exactly inspire confidence in your punter. So I think that's just the answer though, Jeremy. He's got to be better. We've seen games that he's been fine, right? And that's the thing. It's more of a consistency battle with him than it is just not able to perform at this level of college football, because I don't think that's the case. I think he can do it. It's just when it gets kind of off track a little bit or off the rails, it gets really ugly. And Saturday was really ugly. And the Indiana loss, those hurt. It wasn't as ugly as Saturday, but those hurt. So I do think a little bit of it is magnified because the two losses, you can look and say special teams was really,
And he was bad.
underwhelming.
I mean, he was bad.
That's right. Yeah. But I think you do, like, he was good in the Iowa game, right? And he's been good at times. So you hope you can get a bounce back, and you hope this week you can kind of move there, because I just don't know that there are very many other, when your head coach is asked if there's, what other personnel do you have to go there, and he's naming, well, the kicker could also punt. That means no. I mean, there are punters who kick, place kicking and punt, but ain't often, man. And I think it's just got to be him.
The variance for Hugh has been too big, right? Like, he has looked like a great Big Ten punter against Nebraska, against Iowa, against Virginia. I thought he had some great moments. Then the Indiana game, Chattanooga, he averaged 31.4 yards per punt in that one, but it didn't matter because he was a blowout. And Michigan State, man, that was, I know the wind, but there was really only one that was impacted by wind, right? And you see Bryce Behringer on the other side and what he can do. I'm not expecting Hugh Robertson to be that, but he just got to be more consistent. Red zone. Brett Bielema said, hey, why are you guys talking so much about the red zone? He knows this has been an issue all year. And I thought Barry Lunny, he does this really well. Like, he owns it. He owns some things, but he also was honest in that they didn't execute some of their play calls, both in the red zone and the short yardage situations. You talked with Bart Miller, the offensive line coach. The offensive line had its worst game of the season, in my opinion. Like, they lost the point of attack. Some of that, Simeon Barrow was really good. Jacob Slade was really good. Like, Michigan State's talented up front, but that was just maybe it's just an outlier, but that was a surprise that Illinois' offensive line struggled like it did. And then you have Tommy DeVito throw a poor pass on 4th and goal where the play was open. You had some other opportunities for running backs to make a cutback maybe and make a play. You got to execute better, whether that's the play call or the actual play call that's set up for success. The players got to execute it.
Yeah, I don't know if it's more or less frustrating when it's not just the same thing every week, right? It'd be one thing if every week Barry Lunny just called a bad play and time over. But it's a combination of probably some calls, and Barry's admitted that, some calls that he would like to have back, and just some calls that were well drawn up that weren't executed. This game has a lot of potentials because, we've heard, right, Jeremy? We've heard this team, like, us against everybody. They wear a chip, and is it manufactured? Yes, in the same way that Brad Underwood manufactured a chip on his team's shoulder. And actually, maybe to be fair, not all of Illinois' chip is manufactured. They've been kind of a punching bag for a lot of those guys' career. But it just seems to me like the Vince McMahon strut into the post-game presser if they're successful in the red zone. And I'm sure because Brett Bielema likes to remind us of what we say and what we write, and that's fine. That's accountability. I'm sure it will be brought up if they do have success in the red zone.
We
But
would
you know what,
do,
though?
we would not be doing our jobs if we did not bring up the
Right, yeah,
and he understands
100%.
that. But yes, if they have success, but that's why we write about it, because like this is the biggest thing holding them back from being 9-0.
That's right. The two things that we just talked about, right?
Special teams and
But frankly, with red zone, with more efficiency in the red zone, you could probably overcome some of those special teams moment. The goal line at Indiana, the goal line against Michigan State. He gets it, and that's not a knock on Brett Bielema. He likes to, and that's fine. I don't think you and I mind the accountability of what we say or what we write. I know we don't.
No.
But yeah, this game has like some potential to be a "we told you so" game if they can do it. But they've got to prove that they can do it, and that's just what's been missing here, Jeremy. They've overcome it all but twice this year, which those two are holding you back.
Those are the two things that have been similar all year, even in wins. But in the losses, they are magnified, and your special teams and your red zone efficiency has been the two things holding this team back for sure. The other thing is the running backs, tight ends. The offenses are clearly attacking that for Illinois, and they should. I think Illinois would say that's better than going deep with wide receivers or being able to run all over us. So the running backs and tight ends in the passing game is certainly something they need to clear up. I think you and I both have confidence Ryan Walters will address that. And mostly it's communication between the linebackers, because on these screen passes, the tight ends they know that these guys get crossed up. When you cross, we talked about Nebraska with Jay Lehman. We saw it with Michigan State. When they cross, there's pick plays, and they have to communicate on that. So I'm wondering whether Purdue does attack that, because Payne Durham's a good tight end. Maccabees is a good running back. So I'm interested to see how they get those guys involved in the passing game and how Illinois defends it, because it has been really their one weakness outside of when they have their third or fourth corner in, right?
Yeah, and I'm with you. I think Ryan Walters has probably earned the benefit of the doubt to say we expect that to be cleaned up this week. On the other side, the Braun brothers are pretty darn good at this offense thing. And like, that they're finding ways to exploit that. They should. If they've got Payne Durham, they're smart. They know, they see that. So that is such an interesting, like, Charlie Jones and Devin Witherspoon are going to get all the attention, and they should, because that is an awesome matchup. And it's awesome. I know I'm going off tap, but it's awesome in the sense that, like, we've seen a lot of teams just say, no, we're not going towards Devin Witherspoon. We saw it last week. That's not going to be the case with Purdue. I am pretty confident in saying that Purdue is not going to stop targeting Charlie Jones. So that's what makes that more fun. So like that gets all the attention. But it is really interesting to see how the Braun brothers exploit this running back, tight end, I guess, deficiency that we've seen Illinois' defense have, and also how Ryan Walters and his coaching staff go about trying to shore that up. Like, that's such a fun subplot in this game.
That said, I don't expect them to change what they do. Like,
No.
I make adjustments with, hey, this is how we would defend if you see screen and all that. But I don't expect them to change what they do, because what they do has been so dang successful, right? Like, you don't want to change who you are based on one little weak point. He's got to try and strengthen that weak point and keep it from killing you, right? Because an offense at some point is going to find an advantage. You just got to limit what that advantage is.
That's right. And those have been leaky plays, especially in the last 2 weeks. It didn't bury them at Nebraska. And you could make an argument, a pretty real argument, that it wasn't the reason they lost to Michigan State. It was just something that Michigan State found and exploited.
Well, I would rather have Jalen Berger catch the ball in a screen pass than Keon Coleman get something deep, or a Trey Palmer go off on me compared to, the second tight end that Nebraska had. I'd much rather that.
It's my guess that you are not alone in that line of thinking, because you can do a lot more, get to the football, tackle for, a gain. And some of those, Jimmy, like, there were a couple bigger plays in the last few weeks, but some of those were 7-8 yards. I mean, you'll live with that if it means you're keeping someone out of the end zone.
And we're talking about the linebackers. Like, the defensive line they have to do a better job of understanding, whoa, they just let me blow by them. That's got to be difficult when you're a Calvin Avery or a Johnny Newton or Keith Randolph, because you're like, oh, I'm going to get a sack here, going to blow up this play, but the play's already behind me, right? Like that's where those are tough. Those are tough for defensive linemen, and coordinators are taking advantage of that. Let's talk more about this matchup, Joey. Purdue's passing attack, it's dangerous, right? You look up and down Aiden O'Connell's game log. He's averaging 300 passing yards a game. Nobody else in the Big Ten, not CJ Stroud, is doing that. 365 against Penn State, 424, 3 touchdowns at Syracuse, 360 and 2 touchdowns against Maryland, 391 and 4 touchdowns against Nebraska. Last 2 weeks, though, against similar teams, Iowa, Wisconsin, he has thrown 1 touchdown to 5 interceptions. Charlie Jones is an amazing wide receiver compared to what was he, the 4th guy at Iowa last year, and now he's the number 1 receiving guy in the Big Ten, at least by the stats. But they go to him and go to him and go to him. They don't have what Michigan State had, which was 2-star receivers. They don't have the depth in their passing attack. They don't have the efficiency. Aiden O'Connell's pass efficiency has gone about 30 points down this season. Again, he's thrown 10 interceptions. For how much he throws the ball, that's not a ridiculous amount. But the last 2 weeks, he's thrown 5 interceptions against good defenses in Wisconsin and Iowa. So there's a really dangerous passing attack, right? But I think Michigan State had more answers. Purdue seems to have one connection that's working for them. And I would say Payne Durham is pretty solid too, tight end.
Yeah, I'm with you. And it turns out the big answer that Purdue has, Illinois really believes in its answer across the field in Devin Witherspoon. And I think they'll take a matchup where I think that staff believes so highly of Devin Witherspoon, they'll take him in any matchup. Now, Charlie Jones is going to get his. What does that look like? I don't know. Is it 5 catches for 50 yards? Could be, right? I mean, he's a good player. He's a really good player. But I think Illinois will basically say, beat us without Charlie Jones. And can Purdue do that? Probably. Will Purdue do that? I don't know. I think you're going to see, I think as we talked about, Taz Nicholson back is a big deal. Payne Durham is a guy, though, because we've seen tight ends, as we've talked about, have some success. We saw it against Iowa, where Sam Laporta had a really big first half. They adjusted, they shut that down. So could this be more Matthew Bailey? Well, might we, especially as you look at potentially not being with Seth Coleman, could you see more of that? I don't know. I think having Matthew Bailey helps. Sidney
Brown.
Right. But I think like a dime package where we've seen Matthew Bailey against a team that's, especially if they're coming from behind at any point, that's certainly not going to be bashful about throwing the ball. So I think Durham is a really, really interesting matchup here for Illinois, because I think Devin Witherspoon has earned the benefit of the doubt to say he's going to be just fine to hold his own against Charlie Jones. Again, I don't know what that looks like, but I don't think it looks like pain and a loss for Illinois.
Here's the thing about Purdue. I can't blame Brom for going heavy with O'Connell and Charlie Jones, right? That's one of the most dynamic pairings in the Big Ten. They're running the ball way better this year, yet he's running it the same amount. Like they're both 38%. They ran the ball last year, 39% this year. That said, they're averaging 3.8 yards per carry. That's more than 1 yard more than they had last year. Devin Mockabee, it kind of looks awkward when he runs. This is a walk-on redshirt freshman, 6 foot 195. He looks bigger than that, but he kind of like runs like all elbows and knees. But he's been darn effective. I think he's got 4 out of the last 6 games. He's run for 100 yards. He didn't against Iowa last week because they barely ran the ball. They got behind early in that one, but you got to stop the run here too, because this is a Purdue team that can run the ball a little bit more effectively. And Michigan State did have some success at times on the ground. So while O'Connell and Charlie Jones are still number 1, this Purdue team, if they want to, has been able to run the ball against some Big Ten teams. Hasn't been as good the last couple of weeks, but they haven't just run the ball as much because they gotten behind.
Yeah, I think that's huge. I mean, it sounds elementary to say stop the run, but if you can stop the run or slow the run, whatever that looks like, and get up 7-10 points, that's when I think you could play into your strength. Illinois believes in their secondary. They should. So I think, but it starts with getting up
great with the lead. This team has been great with the lead.
Yeah, and Purdue is going to, again, Purdue's not afraid to get one-dimensional when they're trying to come from behind and throw the ball. So I think Illinois put on to the fact that Purdue's probably going to try to run a little bit because it's going to be cold. It's probably going to have some wind gusts, and you want to try to do that to not have to be forced to throw the ball. But yeah, man, it's funny. Do you remember watching back with the Penn State that Purdue played in that first week? And it got down late, and I think they were in a pretty good position to maybe get close to a win. It's like, hey, if Jeff Brom runs the ball, they might be able to sneak out of this thing with the win. They didn't do it.
It's not his DNA, man. It's not what he does.
But I think it's interesting because but Penn State's also got pretty good players in the secondary. This is such a big Devin Witherspoon week. I know they can run. This is a Devin. I'm giving away my pick to click. I don't care.
Well, here you go. Devin Witherspoon, we found out the stat this week, but the last 3 weeks, Trey Palmer, 1 catch, 1 yard. He didn't even give up that yard.
That yard.
Keon Coleman, 2 catches, 26 yards. And he didn't give up either of those catches. He didn't give up a catch against Michigan.
He didn't get targeted. They didn't throw it near. They didn't throw it to him once.
Didn't throw it at him. Charlie Jones now, right? Look, I'm not even saying what he did against Virginia.
That's right.
Forget about the receivers that played there. This is the last couple of weeks, Devin Witherspoon stock that was already high, skyrocketing. And this is another chance to do that against the guy that I think is going to be on an NFL team next year. Like Charlie Jones is going to be a returner and a slot guy somewhere, right? Like his college stuff is better than Hunter Renfro's probably at that point. Like, you know what I mean? Like similar players. He's going to have a chance to show himself yet again as a day 1 or a day 2 pick. And he's been up for every challenge so far. So you got to love that matchup for Illinois. Might give up one, right? Might give up 1 or 2, but it's been a while since we've seen it. What was it, the last 3 weeks or 4 weeks that we figured out?
What was the game? There was one that he gave up.
He didn't have a great game.
Yeah.
He didn't have a great game against Indiana, but here's the stat. Last 6 games for Devin Witherspoon, 20 targets. So he only gets targeted like 3 or 4 times a game. He's allowed just 5 receptions for 19 yards the last 6 games.
That's maybe what gets me so excited about this. Because if I looked at PFF earlier, Charlie Jones has been targeted, I think, 115 times, which is like 3rd most in the country. That is their option, right? Like this isn't going to be a case like we always for the last 2 weeks we've been excited like, oh, that's going to be a fun matchup. It really hasn't been because they haven't really targeted him all that much. He is going to get targeted. Like that is what's going to be fun. Is like that's going to come to fruition. There's no way that matchup doesn't come to fruition in some capacity. I think it's just fun to if you like watching receivers and defensive backs go and talk. This is going to be that chance.
Can we ask ESPN too? Can we zoom out the camera a little bit this time? Like we're always in the box. Like give us the all 22 of this. Maybe not Kendall Smith 20 yards back. You can zoom in a little bit more than that. But let's show Charlie Jones and Devin Witherspoon on the screen because I agree with you, Joe. I don't think they can go away from him. If they do, advantage Illinois, right? Because Baz Nicholson, Sidney Brown, Quan Martin, those guys are all still really good. Kendall Smith on the back half. I would imagine Kendall Smith is looking more at Charlie Jones's side this week. But let's show that side of the field because I think they are going to test Devin Witherspoon when other teams don't want to do it.
You know what else has struck me? It's like sometimes there's gamesmanship. Like even with Trey Palmer, is like, yeah, it'll be Devin Witherspoon and Quan Martin. And some of that's because of where Trey Palmer lined up. Nah, man, not this week. Ryan Walters came out and said, I bet number 31 is going to be on him. And this isn't one of those where you're trying to say, oh, maybe we'll throw multiple guys. That hasn't been the MO coming out of the Smith Center. Yeah. This is your assignment, Devin Witherspoon. Go guard him. Let's see how it plays out. But I do think Charlie Jones is going to get some, right? It'd be foolish to think he wouldn't.
Devin surprised me the last couple of weeks.
I'd say that might not age well. Hell, I don't know.
I thought Trey Palmer would have a decent, I thought he'd have 4 catches for 50 yards. And all right, Purdue, their D-line is a strength. Like their D-line's been pretty good. They lost Karlaftis, who's been great in the NFL. Not a surprise there. So they have some guys up front, maybe not a huge NFL guy, but Dean in the middle has been really good. They got a long defensive end and then a short defensive end who's good at rushing the passer, but their secondary has been awful. Their tackling has been bad. They're giving up big plays. So for me, Joey, Purdue has not had a lot of success against physical teams though. So the defensive line's been better than I thought it would be this year, but Minnesota didn't have success, but they didn't have Ibrahim, right? Wisconsin had 178 rushing yards. Keegan Johnson of Iowa had a career day last week, 200 rushing yards in that game. Get Chase Brown to the second level and get Isaiah Williams the ball. Test those guys in the open field because they aren't tackling worth a crap right now. So get the ball to the second level, and I think you have a great chance to bust off some big ones because Wisconsin and Iowa have done it, and those aren't explosive teams either.
Yeah, I think we talked about the offensive line in the red zone. You and I have covered Bart Miller for a year and a half now, almost 2 years. Those guys, I would assume he's challenged his offensive line this week to get out there and to play better. And that means.
Do you think the term nut up has been mentioned this week with the offensive line group?
I don't know, because Bart told me it wasn't like for a lack of physicality that he thought against Michigan State, but I think you noticed it, and maybe it came up in the post game with Brett. I want to say that game, the strain. I just said extended strain a little bit. I would bet that's probably come up. I don't know if I don't know specifically what Bart Miller has said to his guy, but I think
but I agree with you. I think they've been challenged. It's like, this is what we're supposed to be. And while you've been good all year, you weren't good against Michigan State, and it really cost us a chance to win that game and to have this be the clincher. So I'm going to spoil my in the spotlight. Last week, it was the offensive line, and they didn't live up to that. I'm going with the offensive line again. Like, you set the tone. I don't think they set the tone last week.
No. So what does pissed off Alex Palczewski and Isaiah Adams specifically look like? Because we know those two play kind of
it's not those guys I'm worried about. It's the other thing.
I know. Yeah. Interior wise, I think to your point with some of those, the defensive front, it's going to be interesting. But man, I have to think Bart Miller is pushing those guys with a heavy challenge. Not that I don't think he challenges them week in and week out, but if you can get Chase Brown to establish himself, and like you said, Purdue is susceptible to maybe Tommy DeVito. I was encouraged with what we saw from Tommy DeVito in that last possession that ultimately ended in nothing against Michigan State. He threw the ball around. Not that we didn't think he could, but there's something there. Like we've seen it a little bit, but there's something more brewing, I think, with him and Brian Hightower in terms of the connection on some of those deep balls. I think there's just more confidence gaining there week in and week out, because that's been pretty fruitful for Illinois.
Well, I mean, that's the point, is like, if you can run on Purdue, then you can also throw on Purdue.
Right. That's right.
You can throw on Purdue no matter what. If you can run as well, like, that'd be huge for this team. I mean, Chase Brown, man, like, the thing is, he hasn't had a big one in a while, right? Like, he's had a 20-yard gain, 18 last week, and then he fumbled. This feels like a week he could break a big one because Purdue's not very good in the open field. So get him to the second level, get onto their linebackers, and I think you have a chance. The other thing is, I mentioned it, Graham Mertz and Spencer Petras, who haven't been fantastic. I mean, Mertz has been really good under Jim Leonard, but each of the last 2 weeks, efficient, 200 passing yards about each, 2 touchdowns, no picks. So this could be a very balanced. Like, I feel good about this offensive matchup if your offensive line plays like it did during that 6-game win streak.
Yeah, 100%. I agree with you. You're right. Graham Mertz has been better. We're still throwing. If you can be in the conversation with Spencer Petras, you've got to take that opportunity, right? As a quarterback. I'm kidding. Yeah, man, I think there's going to be opportunity there for Illinois to move the ball. I don't know that the weather conditions are going to do that. Sometimes I feel like that gets overblown. My God, these guys have played in the cold before. They played Illinois. Nothing new to them.
All right. You ready for your pick to click? Or are you going offense?
Can we recap last week when you lost?
Okay. Recap.
You had Josh McCray offensively, if I recall.
It did not work out.
I think I had Chase Brown, but I think I needed him to have 150, and it ended up being like 130.
So we both lost.
Okay. Yes. The 136-yard or 140-yard rusher that I had lost.
Fumbled twice.
He did. That's fair. I don't remember who we had defensively.
Well, you had Spoon, right?
I did. So I win.
Who did I take last week?
I
don't even remember these things.
Yeah, I don't either. You may have had one of the fronts. That sounds right, doesn't it?
I can't even remember. Anyway, yeah, go take the win if you want to take the win.
You know, finally.
Who are you taking offense? Or can I go first offense? You go first.
You go first offense.
Isaiah Williams. I just think he's been so good the last couple weeks. Again, a team that struggles to tackle, get him the ball. My biggest issue, maybe with Barry Lunny last week, was get him more touches. Isaiah Williams had 5 touches for 98 yards, whatever it was. I thought they could have fed him even more, especially when your running game was struggling a little bit. I thought you could have got him going first down, give it to Isaiah Williams, get a few yards. So I think he's got a 100-yard game potentially in him, but he's just been really good here recently, and maybe it's gone a little bit under the radar. But Isaiah Williams is my guy.
Can I pick a room?
Yeah.
Can I pick the tight end room?
Sure. Yeah.
What does that look like? I think if they get, I don't want to say 2. That's a lot. 2 touchdowns is a lot for them.
50+ yards. I'll put you in the realm of winning.
50+ yards and a touchdown, because I think that they could be red zone alternatives.
They should.
I will take the tight end room for 50+ yards and a touchdown.
Yeah, I mentioned this with Jay, and we did our film room, which I made free. So go back and watch that. I think the one adjustment Barry can use is, I think sometimes he force feeds Chase when their strength has not been on the interior of the offensive line, right? Like especially, Pihlstrom, Chrysler have struggled at times in those short yardage situations. I think sometimes they force feed Chase when the defense knows they're trying to go to him. Some of that might have been, I don't know. I don't want to put this on the coaches. Are they trying to get Chase touchdowns for a Heisman vote, right? Or a Doak Walker vote? Use Chase as a decoy. Sometimes you want to get him the ball, but sometimes the best success they had last week in the red zone was when they got to Isaiah Williams and teams were crashing on Chase. They got it to, they had that great formation where Chase is behind 3 tight ends and they fake to Chase, go to Tip Ryman for an easy touchdown for Tommy DeVito. Or easy 2-point conversion, excuse me. So that stuff's been working. So I think that's the attention, the eyes. I'll go to Chase. That gives you that split second to get it to somebody else.
I really like that formation because we've seen that. Like that wasn't the first time we've seen the formation. That just usually is like a jumbo package type screen, right? Like it does usually go to Chase. I like that
run. Yeah.
Yeah. I really like that they leaked Ryman out wide open in the back of the end zone. I feel good about this. I feel pretty good.
Okay.
What's your, I think 100 yards for Isaiah Williams, right?
Yeah.
Gets it. Yeah.
And 2 touchdowns last week. He's another red zone guy. Like I know he's
right,
smallish, but he's been really good in the red zone.
Jets, the shovel, more shovels.
Shovel passes seem to work.
It's coming into snow. We got to get the shovel out.
That's right. Who's your defensive pick to click?
Why would I go away from something that worked? Devin Witherspoon again. Another week, another test, another chance to raise that draft stock a little bit more. I don't know how much more. I think to me, that's like 3 catches and 50 yards, right? Like it, yeah. Is that fair?
Yeah, no, absolutely. They need to get a pass rush. And I feel like Johnny Newton's cheating. He's just so dang good at this.
He is in Chase Brown mode right now, isn't he?
He's starting to get him and Devin Witherspoon are starting to get that. But I'll give you Devin for another week, given the test.
You could take Johnny for another week. If I get Devin, you could take Johnny. This could be the last week of it.
I don't care about the tallying points. I just want to mention this guy because I think he's going to be huge. If Seth Coleman's out, Gabe Akers has to be awesome. Gabe Akers has to be great. Alec Bryant will certainly play a role into that. But this is the time of year where you hear coaches say he's not a freshman anymore, even though he is a freshman. But this is the time where you hope that experience pays off. He's good against the run. He gets pressure consistently. And maybe he can make one of those game-changing plays that Seth Coleman has made time after time. Gabe's had a few of them too, but Seth has had a few more of them. Like they're probably going to need that. And given that Hayden O'Connell's going to throw the ball probably 40+ times in this game, Gabe can't tire out. There's not a lot of depth behind you. It's a big game for the freshman All-American likely.
I like it. Now I feel like I've cheated taking Devin Witherspoon because the other part of me really wants to take one of the safeties. I'm going to stay with Witherspoon, but Sidney Brown, Quan Martin, Matthew Bailey.
It's a great time to add to their interception total, right? 5 interceptions the last couple of weeks. They're going to throw the ball 40+ times, most likely. So it's a great time for them to add to that interception total.
It is. I know we're done with that part. I do want to ask, like, how much of the what-ifery are you playing in this game? I know it's a word. You just please look it up. It's a word. Like if they win last week, we talked about it. Like there are so many stories that could, now again, everything's still in front of them, but for our job, we think stories, we think angles.
Yeah.
They could have closed it this week. And like, I'm so interested in the bounce back.
Well, here you go. Maybe we haven't broken this down well enough. Illinois wins this game. I don't know what the number is going to be, but the likelihood of them winning the Big Ten West is going to be like 80+%. And most likely with Northwestern on the schedule, 90+%, right? Because they have the tiebreakers over every Big Ten West team not named Northwestern, and Northwestern's out of it. So even if there's a three-way tie, say Wisconsin wins out, right? You have the tiebreaker over Wisconsin at 6-3. If you lose this game, Joey, you're all of a sudden at 4-3 going into Michigan, and you got Northwestern left. You still got to finish over 500, and you hope you get to 6-3 or 5-4. But all of a sudden, those tiebreakers all play into account, and Purdue has Indiana and Northwestern left, so they could get to 6-3. Wisconsin's playing really good football. If they get to 6-3 and Purdue get to 6-3, right? Like Wisconsin wins the West. Like, so there's so many scenarios that are out here to play. You got to win this game. This is the most now important game of the year for Illinois football, because it gives you a 2-game lead on everybody in the West with 2 games left to play. That's why this is so important, because you have a 2-game lead on Wisconsin because you got the tiebreaker. You got a 2-game lead on Iowa because you got the tiebreaker. Minnesota, 2-game lead because you got the tiebreaker. Minnesota's lost to too many of these other teams. The Purdue loss really hurts them. Purdue's lost to Iowa and Wisconsin, so the tiebreakers really hurt them. Like Purdue's odds to win the West go up significantly, but Wisconsin's do just as much if they beat Iowa or Iowa beats Wisconsin. Like, this gets fascinating if Illinois loses. If Illinois wins, it's pretty boring until the Northwestern game, right? And you and I think Illinois should crush Northwestern.
Yeah, I do think it would have been story-wise fun for us to cover had they done it there. But yeah, man, this was always the game, right? Like last week could have just made this a sexy story. This was always the game. You had to win, period. Like there was just,
because even if you beat Michigan State last week, you lose to Purdue and they win against Indiana and Northwestern, and you get to 6-3 because you beat Northwestern, they win the division regardless.
That's right. This was always going to be the game. It just, the timeline kind of circled. The timeline changed had they won last week. It's changed since they lost last week. But yeah, you can't lose to Purdue if you want to get to Indianapolis. And I do think Brett Bielema has done a good job of telling it. Like, he doesn't hide this stuff from his guys. I think you can't. Right, you can't.
No, they know. Like Jeff Brom said, "Hey, we brought up the Big Ten West thing the last couple of weeks, and we've lost." So, and they're in a different spot, right? They have to win out to get there. So he's got to focus on this one, because you can't win the next 2. Like the next 2 don't matter if you don't win this one. Brett Bielema knows it's being talked about, knows his guys know it's happening, so he addresses it with his team, and it kind of helps control the narrative within their own building. But I don't think they were overlooking Michigan State, Joey. I just think they didn't play well.
Yeah, and people might disagree with that. That's fine, because it bucks the traditional trap game narrative that people get in love with. I understand, but they didn't play well. You have games that you don't play well. I don't think they thought Michigan State stunk or they were going to run over them. They didn't play well, and they had bad gaffes at bad times. Special teams, red zone. This is and kind of tough luck on injuries.
If you win this game, it's a special season for Illinois, relatively, right?
Oh, yeah.
No matter what happens after this. I mean, I'm assuming you beat Northwestern if you can beat Purdue, but it's a special season because you get to 8 wins for the first time since the Rose Bowl season, right? You have a Big Ten winning season for the first time since the Rose Bowl season. You pretty much guarantee yourself going to Nashville or Florida, right, for a bowl game. And you're one step away from clinching a Big Ten West title. And I think if they win this game, they will play in a Big Ten West title. That's why this game is so massive. So massive.
Yeah. Who would have thought? Who would have thought? Yeah, man, it is. This is a huge game that we'll see. I mean, you're right. This has all the special season. You've already played out of Detroit, right? Which is good for those of us who don't want to spend Christmas in Detroit. But yeah, man, I think that's the interesting thing, and I think Brett Bielema has communicated this. Everything is still there, right? Like it's, and that's not always been the case. It certainly hasn't been the case for other teams in the West after recent losses.
All right, Joey. Yeah, last week was disappointing. right? Really disappointing, given everything that could have been in. You could have been top 12 college football playoff rankings, continue to rise in those things, but you still have a lot to play for. Wrote about that after the game, but what's your prediction? Like, you don't have to give a score. Just what do you think?
Yeah, I think they bounce back and win. I just think that they have answers for what Purdue does, namely throwing the ball. That secondary is really good. I think it's going to be close. I don't think this is. I think 10 points is probably too big of a spread. I think it's going to be a close game. I think there's going to be some mettle shown to come back after that tough loss and put themselves in the driver's seat in the West.
In the preseason, I predicted this to be a win, even though a lot of people had Purdue as a better team than Illinois. I love the matchup. I think we saw that last year. I think Illinois' defense matches up incredibly well. Problem is Illinois couldn't score points. I think they'll score points tomorrow. I think there's a really good matchup for Illinois. And I think Illinois would have played hard regardless. I think the hard part for Purdue now is you got a pissed off team. You got a pissed off Illinois team. I think that's going to bode well for Illinois. Like you said, it's close. I think this has a chance to be a statement for Illinois.
Really?
They got to play clean though, right? Like
Right.
Can't turn it over. I just think they're the matchup wise. I think this is probably a better matchup than Michigan State because Michigan State had more answers, had a little bit more talent up front, and they had their circle the wagons kind of thing, right? So I'm not going to project an Illinois 20-point win or anything, but I just like how this matches up, and I have for a really long time, and I just think Illinois should be pissed off coming into this game. They just have to control that emotion. But a home crowd, cold weather, windy, I think it should help Illinois. And
How many red zone touchdowns? Let's say hypothetically 5 trips.
I feel like they could score some touchdowns not touching the red zone.
Sure. Okay, so let's say hypothetically, let's just take a trip, 4 trips.
I think they get a couple touchdowns, couple field goals. And that's fine.
Yeah, that's fine. You got to get, I think you said the over under at 1.5. You've got to go over.
I go.
Right?
Yeah, I go.
Yeah.
I think they bounce back. It'll be fun. It's a big game. Big game at Memorial Stadium. Joey Wagner, thank you, buddy.
Thanks, man.